live stream and getting this going. Got it. Beautiful. That worked. So that is exciting. So truly, I want to welcome everybody who's here. I know we've got some more people jumping on as we go, and this is being live streamed. So truly honored and thrilled to be here and welcome everybody. And I want, who is ready to learn about their options and choices in financial and investment? Yeah, exactly, Vicki, exactly. And I really want to honor you because it means a lot that you are choosing to take your time to be here with us and to learn and to follow what is a calling for you, something that you are interested in developing and learning and opening up more awareness and broaden your awareness. So many people nowadays make their decisions out of fear and lack and scarcity, and that actually moves us further away from what we're trying to bring to life in our own lives. So I really want to congratulate and honor you for choosing you in this. So if you're watching this live stream, feel free to put comments and share. Andy and I will return back and take a look at it. We don't see it live, the comments, but we will go back. If you're here with us, feel free to use the chat. Andy and I both love it to be interactive and to really feel that essence of the community, not just like watching people, but to really kind of share. So feel free. It's a great way to get to know each other as well. So that's kind of fun. And then really I want to share the intention of today. It's kind of twofold. The Evolution Academy is kind of like my heart's message and mission to bring to life what is possible for women in a community where we learn, grow, share, and shine together, and to really trust what's within, that essence of who we are and live from that space. Believe it, be it, live it. And so part of the intention today is to share and show you, through Andy's own journey, that essence of trusting yourself, believing yourself, following what you know to be right from you is what allowed Andy to go from, living in Mumbai and having a fear of being on the streets to transforming that into a 20-year career on Wall Street, and then moving and transforming that again to bring his message to women to be able to have that confidence and knowledge in the financial industry. And then twofold, that's it, is to go over and really kind of eradicate these myths and fears and touch on some of the common mistakes that people see as what investing is. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it's an honor for me to bring up Andy, and we can get started. And let me just get you up there. Andy, let me pin you. So there we go. We can see you. So truly, I want to thank you. I know you're super busy. You speak on some of great stages, and I know you have, you've helped transform the life of, of the ones, at least in your courses, over 1,200 women to really embody and have that confidence and knowledge to invest. So I'm going to admit some people here. So really want to thank you for taking the time. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to the people here and the ones who are watching this live stream. So thank you very much, Andy, for coming up.
It's great to be here. And of course, thanks for inviting me into, you've got a community that you care deeply about. And obviously you care a lot about who you bring into your community. So I'm grateful to have this opportunity to interact with you and, everyone here.
Awesome. So Andy, I'm going to start off. I like to ask, and I think I jumped over it, but we will have a question and answer period at the end. So, put the questions if you want in the chat. In the meantime, if you want to put a Q so they're easy to see. Otherwise, we will. Andy has been kind enough to say after we kind of do this discussion, so we can really kind of ask any questions, anything that are, that you want to, if we haven't touched on it, that you want to bring to life. But one of the first questions I love to ask, because the essence of the Evolution Academy is truly about who we are, not what we do, not what we have, not the titles. So my first question that I love to share and ask the guests is, who are you at a soul level?
Yeah, it's an important question because I have been studying spirituality, not religion, spirituality over the last 3 years, which really led me to shift from Wall Street to what I'm doing now. Incredible teacher in India. And this question has been very present with me is who am I, right? And I'm in my mid 40s, and how do I want to live life? And it really comes down to how can you, beyond your immediate family, right? My wife and my kids, how are you living so that you can make an impact on someone else's life at their invitation, not presuming someone needs my help, at their invitation? How can I share my skill set and help someone truly live the life of their dreams, right? And if I can, my goal was, can I make a difference to one person? And if I can make a difference to one person, that's a really great objective. But what if I can make a difference to more, right? What if that is my purpose? And, I read this incredible book by Dr. Sanjeev Chopra. It's called The Two Most Important Days in Your Life. And I believe it's a quotation from Mark Twain. The two most important days in your life, the first is when you were born, and the second is when you find purpose. And having tasted power, wealth on Wall Street over 2 decades, especially coming from the background that I did, where I had no money or very little, no safety net at all, you taste that and you're like, well, okay, I've tasted this, now what? What is the purpose, right? Why am I living? How am I making a difference to someone else? And it's because of the way I was brought up by my mom that this purpose that I am now fulfilling is truly something that I'm very grateful for.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And it's something, I think you're right, because, and that's where sometimes we feel like the chase, right? We get stuck in the chase of thinking it's the thing or the achievement. I mean, myself coming from corporate, that was what it was, always that next. Like every time I reached a level, it was like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not satisfied. Oh, there must be. And you're so right. When we can kind of turn that and look at it as like, what can I bring to life?
Yeah.
And share, and bring outside.
And it's the same thing with financial independence, right? I firmly believe financial independence is every woman's birthright, but it remains elusive, right? And that's the impact that I want to try and shift that. But then again, what is the goal, right? Is the goal to become a multimillionaire? Well, what's the deep reason why, right? Why? So what is that? Otherwise, that quest for wealth, even when we get to it, it's so unfulfilling that what is the deep why that I want to be financially independent? What purpose is it going to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, because I know, and I love that you talked about that in the spirituality, because that means like, and that's why I think you and I are so aligned, is whatever your goal is, what is that underlying reason, like the true reason, not just because we know money is a great vehicle to obtain things, but what is the connection as to, like, people say I need money to have adventure. There's other ways we can look at, like, how do I bring that adventure into the day-to-day of my life? So I love that. I love that. So you kind of touched on it too, because my next question is like, what is your life's message? I call it the breath of life, right? Like you talked about that purpose. It's living that passion, that unique, we each have this unique fingerprint, and there's so much that reason for waking up in the morning, and that gives us that energy, right? That natural energy.
Well, it's gender equality, quite very clearly it's gender equality. And here's why that's so important for me. So I grew up in a household in Mumbai, where my mom had a college degree, but she was never allowed to work. Just with the societal pressures and power struggles, she was always financially dependent on my dad in an unhappy marriage, which has if anyone's in an unhappy marriage or has been a child in an unhappy marriage, the consequences are deep. For me, it was crouching in a small apartment, terrified that something might happen to my mom in the middle of the night, where there's violent fighting going on. And this is as far back as I can remember, when I was 5 years old. And this fear that something's going to happen to her and I'm going to get thrown out in the streets of Mumbai was so vivid. And maybe it was just in my head, right? No one told me you're going to get thrown out, but that was the impression I had. And it was reiterated every day. to the point where I'm 46 and I still have that fear, right? I work so hard because I don't want to get thrown out on the streets of Mumbai. That there's very deep consequences of that. And I saw my mom struggle because she couldn't leave my dad because she had 2 kids to support. And I got 2 daughters, and it's 2023, and I've spoken to, gosh, over 1,000 women. And what is amazing is this dependence, right? This dependence on a job, the dependence on a partner, the dependence on a situation is so prevalent even today, where it's just not okay. And I grew up in a Wall Street career where I started in 2000, and forget about having other people that look like me, right? People of color. It was hard to even find women, right? And it's true even now, right? We've got some very powerful women at the top of Wall Street, but it's far from equality, far from equality. And whether we're talking about Wall Street or we're talking about an everyday career, whatever it might be, it takes, I read a statistic that makes me livid, and you being a woman, it will make you livid too. It takes an average woman, regardless of race, 12 to 15 years longer than an average man to get to the same place in retirement. How is that okay? Right? How is that okay? Now, I single-handedly can't fight gender discrimination or wage gaps. I can pay my staff, but beyond that, I don't have control. But what I can do, and that's what I realized, what I can do is share my skill set and help women connect the dots so that when you are investing systematically, not get-rich-quick schemes, and you can see, oh my God, like as a woman, I got a million things to do, but this seems so complicated. This seems so boring. I got like 15 other things to do on my plate before I go to bed. This is the last thing I want to do. And it keeps getting shoved. And what I can do is like actually shine light and say, actually, it can be very empowering. It can be fun. It can be exciting. It doesn't need every day of your time. And you can do this. Look, let me just, as a friend would, right? Sit in a cafe, like Sarah, you could teach me your expertise sitting in a cafe, doodling on a napkin, and that's fun. And that's what I want to do. And that's what I have done over the last 2 years. And that's how I feel women can leapfrog men and cut down this ridiculous gap. Because then through investing system, no one got rich in a 9-to-5 job. No. It's about systematic investing that really makes a difference.
I love that you say that. And though, Andy, you're going to think I'm a goofball because after all that, I forgot to hit record. So I'm going to hit record right now. But I love that you say that too, because this idea of, they say, oh, work hard, that's the way to get to it. And one, that has to do with touching on our purpose, right? Because if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And 2 is having the trust in ourselves to take those steps, to believe in what is possible. And, there are unfortunately many people who are like, I'll speak to them, they're like, oh, everything's equal. I'm like, no, it's not, right? Like that is not the reality yet.
Yeah.
And I love that through your own story, you have chosen to take the path of saying, like, I've seen what's possible. And we're going to touch on, like, when you talk about the myth of why, like, because we say, oh, well, I'm too busy, I'm too this, I'm too that. I have discovered through my own teaching and guidance that those are quite often stories we put as a blockade because we feel safer staying in the comfort zone that we're in rather than stretch ourselves to move past that fear, that resistance. And I mean, you've spoken with so many women and guided, and as I said, between what you teach and even the groups that you have, I mean, thousands of women, what do you think, and what has been shared, not what you think, but what has been shared from these women with you that have been probably the biggest, let's say, fears that really hold them back from claiming, like, oh, okay, because you can still have a dynamic in the family where maybe the husband brings in the money and you're doing the job of running the household and the children, but yet we still have the ability to invest in ourselves, right?
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the biggest kind of stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, so I've interacted with, gosh, like, over 1,200 women, right? And through these conversations, I always like to understand, especially because I am not a woman. But that's who I want to serve, but I'm not a woman. I want to get more data points on what is your pain point, right? What is your approach to investing? What is your fear? What is your biggest fear when it comes to investing? I ask that every single time. And there are 3 responses that come back consistently. So the first one is, I want to invest, but I don't even know where to begin. This is the most common, 99%. This is the most common, right? Number 1 is I want to invest, but I have no idea where to begin. The second one is I'm afraid I'll lose all my money. Right? I'm afraid I'll lose all my money. And you can reflect on this, but this might resonate with some of you as well. And the third one is, Andy, I don't have the time. Now, all 3 are very valid. You want me to dive into these 3 a little bit?
Absolutely. And as I said, guys here in the room, if you're feeling or agree, feel free to put in the chat like a heck yes or not sure. This is totally interactive, and we love to share it with you guys as well.
So let's take these 3, right? So what are these 3? I want to invest, but I don't know where to begin. Second is I'm afraid I could lose all my money. And third is I don't have the time. All 3 are very valid, especially the last one, right? Okay, so let's take them one at a time. So I was having this conversation with with Lisa Carmen Wong, who just published a book called The Bad Bee. It's spelled out in the book. I can never say the word, please. But The Bad Bee Business Bible. And we were having a conversation last week about societal conditioning. And I've heard this from so many women and I'm particularly cognizant of this as I'm raising 2 little girls, is when you look at media, right? It's changing now, but think back to the last 2-3 decades of the image of a woman that's portrayed, right? This idea of perfection, right? And that's what media has, and it's had a consequence of women. And women have told me this. This is not me. This is several women have told me this. Is there is a level of shame if I don't know something, because society expects me to be perfect. And if I don't know something, I feel ashamed. So when it comes to investing, I can't quite admit that I don't know how to invest. I feel ashamed, because then this busts the view that I've had, that I've been raised with, that you got to be this perfect person. So many women have shared this, and I see, Vicky, you're nodding your head. Yeah, this is common. But then what I can offer you is, how we live in our own bubbles, right? This is not something you talk to your friends about money. Who talks about money, right? It's so taboo. But given from my vantage point, where I've spoken to so many women, now let me shine light and say, you know what? You're not alone. You're not the only one who doesn't know how to invest. In fact, that is most people. And guess what? People who invest, right? Non-professionals who've been investing. I've had several women who've been investing for 15 years. They still come to my course. And then in the first week, they realize, I thought I was investing, but what I've now realized is I was gambling. Right?
I can resonate with that. I was very lucky to have a mentor who challenged me to start investing, and I just opened an RRSP, but I actually withdrew from it quite a few times, not understanding the power of compound interest. And so I was just like, somebody told me, I said, oh, okay. And I love what you're saying there too, because there's also like, we do sometimes speak to our friends, but we have mentors. It's like, unless they're living the life you love and doing rock star, don't take their advice. That's called an opinion. It's not true advice from a knowledged, skilled guide, right?
And how do you even know whether this person is knowledgeable or not? There's everybody shouting with a mouthpiece, and
everybody
knows how to invest.
Get rich quick schemes, which we know are exactly that. They're schemes. And I love what you're touching on there, because shame touches on so much, especially in a woman's life, that we're to speak our truth, to be vulnerable enough to share can be really hard, because, and exactly like you said, because you do live in this bubble and you think you're the only, like, I consider it being like the monster, right? Like you're the gargoyle, Cyclops. And yet when you do start to open up, when you do start to share, you do realize that you aren't alone. It's actually more common, these fears, these sense of shame and doubt.
Yeah.
It's actually sadly very rampant in a lot of.
And that's the first thing, right? Is acknowledgement and recognizing. And that's why I love the communities that you've created, right? You've got a community of incredible women. I've got a community of incredible women. And when you get together and you can talk about this in a safe space, so many women have said, oh my God, like, I feel a weight has lifted off my shoulders. I'm going to show up as me, as authentically me, that I haven't showed up for the last 4 decades, 5 decades of my life, 6 decades of my life. And it gives you that spring in the step. So it's about this creating the safe space. And the first thing is recognizing. So this first point about, I don't know, I want to invest, but I don't know where to begin. And I'm so ashamed of this. They don't necessarily verbalize that, but you can see that is, wait a second, that is almost everybody. Unless you grew up on Wall Street, right? That's almost everybody. So let's just, you're in the right place, right? You're okay. You're okay as you are. The first big step is you're acknowledging. Now let's take the next step. All right, so next step. The second fear is I might lose all my money. Now that is such a valid fear because that's how most people invest. Let me give you some examples. So media will not talk about boring strategies. Media only gets clicks and eyeballs if they talk about the most exciting one, the hot stocks. Oh my God, look at this hot stock went down. All right, so perfect example, a utility, right? A utility. How wrong can you go with a utility, right? This one company that I've followed, even when I was a hedge fund, I was following it professionally. So I want to give you the stark example. I was following this company professionally for a number of years. And because I like the company, I've invested in it even as after I left my Wall Street career. This company went down 20% in one day. Oh. In one day. This just happened 2 days ago. I wrote about a post with this.
Yeah, I
got it wrong. I got it wrong. I, as a professional, was following this company. I've followed this company for 9 years. I got it wrong. Right? Like, I'm not a professional. I used to be a professional, but if I can get it wrong, what are the chances that other people who don't follow so closely or know the story so closely, the fact that it went down 20% tells you that Wall Street got it wrong, not just me. If Wall Street knew this was coming, it wouldn't be down at all.
And I'm going to add in there because one of the lessons that I have learned too, and I love that you talk about it, and your essence of your whole message is learning to follow what you love and look at it and take some time, because the hedge funds, the big ones that are prospecting, like they'll invest in a slew of them, more than half fail, and they just highlight, oh, look how good we are at projecting, and in reality they're just doing selective announcement.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll give you a perspective on that in a minute. But coming back to this is like, okay, the fear that I could lose all my money is because that's what you see on the news, right? It's mostly taking concentrated positions. Look at Bitcoin. It was the craze of 2021. It was as high as $60,000. It's now trading at 19,500, right? This is not a ding against Bitcoin, right? There's a place for it for certain people in their portfolio. But a lot of people that I know saw, oh my God, my neighbor just bought a Porsche from the profits of Bitcoin. I'm going to put all my savings into Bitcoin. Oh my God. Oh my God. Or Rivian. Who here has heard of Rivian? Rivian, this electric vehicle maker. It came to the market, which means you can buy shares in it in 2022. And it was supposed to be the next Tesla. Well, it was the worst performing stock in 2022. It was down 75%. Or let's look at another example, DD Global. You wouldn't have heard of DD Global. It's considered the Uber of China. Think about it. Uber has a market share of about 50-60% in the United States. This company has a 90% plus market share in China, which has a massively higher population than the United States. How can you go wrong investing in the Uber of China? This company has lost 95% of its value. So these are just exactly right. Yes, Vicky, that's a reaction, right? How could you go wrong with the Uber of China? You would have lost 95%. So these people who would think investing, you go invest in concentrated positions and you will become a big, the way to make quick money and to retire rich is, let me find the next Tesla, let me find the next Bitcoin, let me find this next, is so flawed. And unless you have someone, and it's not a plug for me, but unless you have someone like me who has, like, I started my career in 2000. So I've seen the 2000 dot-com bust. I've seen the 08-09 dot-com bust, the 08-09 global financial crisis. I've seen the rebound on the markets, the crashes. If you haven't studied that, and if you haven't lived through it, you have amateurs teaching others how to pick single stocks. And let me shine some light on why that is so dangerous. The period between the global financial crisis and the end of last year, end of 2021, that 15-year period is called the Goldilocks period in history. And the best example I can give you is if you put a monkey, right, and you gave the monkey 10 darts, and you put 500 stock tickers, like names of companies, in front of the monkey. And he said, monkey, go hit, just, you're my financial advisor, go throw these 10 darts and I'll go invest in those companies. The 2009 to 2021 period was such an incredible period in the stock market, and we can go into why it was. Let's just stick with the takeaways. It was such an incredible period in the stock market quadrupled, that if the monkey would have thrown darts on 10 companies, very likely you would have made a lot of money. And now let's fast forward. What's happened is hubris, and people are like, oh my God, look how much money I made in that period. Let me teach you how to invest and get rich quick. By picking these single companies. Well, a monkey could have picked 10 companies, right? That is one of the worst ways to invest because the paradigm has shifted. We're no longer in a zero interest rate environment. We're no longer in that environment. And we have to be diversified. And here's what I share with people. Investing is risky, right? You can get a risk-free return. Actually, it's pretty attractive. It's once in many decades that we have this opportunity where you can invest risk-free and get about 5.5% to 6% over the next 6 to 9 months. Risk-free, right? But if you want to invest 5-10 years, it's risk-free, you'll get about 4%, give or take. Yeah. So that's risk-free. I can close my eyes. But if I want more than that, I got to take risk. Now, here's the difference. There's research done that shows most people, most amateurs, most non-professionals take on way more risk than they realize because they have no idea how to measure risk. They have no idea. That's human behavior. So here's the thing about investing is you can choose. I make the analogy of a roller coaster. A high roller coaster has high highs and low lows, right? That's a high roller coaster. Or you can be on a small roller coaster and high highs, smaller highs and smaller lows. Now, if someone is 25 and starting their career and they got 40 more years of earning potential, well, you would want to go on a higher roller coaster because for that high risk, I expect to earn a higher return. Why else would I take a higher risk, right? But I can stomach a high and I can stomach a low because I got another 40 years of earning potential. That's how I invested when I was 22. But as now in my mid-40s, I want a little bit more ballast. So my risk is lower than the overall market. And for the women who take my course who are in their 60s, well, one of my students is 81.
Yeah, I love it.
Isn't that so amazing? Oh my gosh, she's such a rock star. She's like, Andy, I think it's about time I learn how to invest. I'm like, absolutely yes, right? And she's
never too late.
It's never too late. Absolutely not. What the point I'm making is exactly that. It's never too late. You choose, you design your roller coaster differently. So her roller coaster, the ones who are 60s or the one who's 81, is a third of the overall market. And given where we are, her expected returns are not that much lower. Isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, and that is one of the secret sauces on Wall Street. It shouldn't be secret because we won a Nobel Prize, but it is. So the first point was, I want to invest, but I don't know where to begin. And we can shine light and say, you're actually in the vast majority. The second one is, I'm afraid I could lose all my money. Well, yes, if we invest in these hot stocks and put all our money, yes, of course you can lose all your money. But the right way to invest is a diversified portfolio where you can reduce your risk materially. We're talking 30, 40, 50, 60%. without potentially giving up returns. So there's a way, and you choose your roller coaster. And the third one is I don't have time. That is so valid, right? Let's look at our schedules, right? Look at our days, especially as a woman. I admire my wife. I have no idea how she does half the things she does. And as I look at my sister and my women friends, I don't know how women end up with more responsibilities than guys, but your calendars are much more booked. And when we come with the impression that investing is complicated and investing is boring, right? Why would we want to do those things? So if I've got 10 things on my list, it's human behavior to push off stuff that is boring, to push off stuff that's complicated. I'm never going to get to it. As a result, I never get to it. And then I realized, oh my God, I've either relied on someone else and they turned out not to be great because I didn't know what questions to ask them.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. And now I'm like, oh shit, like I didn't realize I was in with a bad financial advisor. It's not a dig against financial advisors. It's a very good financial advisors. I know several of them, but there are also very bad ones. And when we don't know what questions to ask, we have no idea. Is this a bad one? Is this a good one?
Yeah.
And then it's too late before we realize. And a lot of women have said, my financial advisor talks down to me, patronizes me, right?
And that touches back on that idea of shame, right? Like, because when you don't know the right questions to ask, you fall. Unfortunately, we allow ourselves to fall in that default of like, oh, did I not ask a smart question? So even just having the breadth of knowledge to be, as I said, for myself, it was like I didn't understand like when they changed their stocks and a fiduciary versus non-fiduciary, especially in the States. It's kind of like insurance, right? Like, oh, they suddenly only sell you the policy that, and in the States and stuff too, I think that you can double dip. And so to have that, and I think a lot of it too at the time is we have this idea of investing, either like we see these single stocks on the news or we see from the movies. And it's like, oh my God, I have to be abreast of every single news article going on. And it's like, you see that, yeah, that's what I love what you share, because we have this image of like, you see these people watching every step, and there are like, I know some very well-to-do people who will pick one or two to give a risk on, because they have, like you said, they have that risk factor, say, what am I willing to potentially lose? And they have a much larger purse to be able to say, okay, I'm going to play with it. But their main portfolio is supported exactly in the conversation you're having of that diversification, of having it in. Yeah, I love that.
We'll talk about that. You're raising a good point. So on this point about I don't have time, well, what are our choices? Being in cash is a guaranteed way to lose money. Why? Because you're earning about 1.5%, maybe 2% in the bank, and inflation is 3-4%. Well, every year you're losing money. Guaranteed loss. Most people don't appreciate that. Guaranteed loss.
Wow.
In fact, not investing is risky.
True.
I'll say that again. Money in the bank, right? Yeah, Vicky. Money in the bank is guaranteed to lose your money. Not investing is risky. And let's tie that up with point number 2. You decide to go on your own roller coaster, depending on what stage in life you're at. And by at the end, I'll share a link with you all. Most people don't even know how do I know what my unique roller coaster is? I've got a very simple process, and it's right on my course. I'm going to gift it to you. You go. Most people even miss that. Most people don't even know how to do this. So they don't even know where they're going. It's like setting a GPS. If I don't even set my GPS, how the hell am I going to get to my destination? I could get into a million different directions, right? Which is why most people don't reach their financial goals by the time they retire, and then they're surprised. So all of you on this call and watching this, at least you'll benefit from the starting point, and it's super easy. And I guide you through 5 questions. So that's that. So I don't have time. Okay. Very valid. But how important is it for me to have financial independence, to not be dependent on a situation, partner, or circumstance? How important it is for me to teach my kids how to invest, right? Dean Graziosi, one of my mentors, says, look, there was a best time, but the second best time is now.
Mhm.
So I think the best time to start investing is when you're a teenager. Even I missed that boat. I started when I was 22. But the second best time is now. Like my student who's 81. She'll just pick a different roller coaster. At least she won't make silly mistakes and blow up whatever nest egg she has now, and intelligently and knowingly be able to invest what she's got so she can live a very comfortable remaining life. And that's what's important. It's not about just making money. It's also about not, well, you can't guarantee you're not going to lose money, but that you don't make a stupid decision like being in Rivian or all your money in Bitcoin and then blow up your savings. And now you're 10 steps behind. So how important is your time? And even if you've got a financial advisor, you want to be able to have a two-way conversation rather than a one-way. And like I said, this is not a ding against financial advisors. There's some very, very good ones, but there are also some very bad ones. And one of my students graduated from my course. She was recently divorced, mid-40s, and math scared her ever since she was in 3rd grade. Very successful marketing executive. But money is something she didn't want to handle. Her husband handled it before her. She got a large settlement, and she went to a bulge bracket, a big financial advisory firm. But what people don't know is they've got multiple teams within those. And she was allocated to a team. And halfway through my course, this is early 2022 when markets were going down. She's like, Andy, I think I've got a terrible portfolio. I'm like, you determined that. You've taken my course. You determined I'm not a financial advisor. By the end of the course, she looked at her portfolio. She's like, this is terrible. And she knew the language, and she sent a simple question to her advisor. And guess what the advisor did? He decided to put her back in her shell. And he sent an email intimidating her with 10 attachments, 10, 20, 30-page attachments, sent her 10 different terminologies for one thing that she was asking, intimidation. And guess what she did? By now, she felt so empowered, she fired him on the spot. On the spot.
Amazing.
She took the control back. She took the empowerment back. And what she did was she went and interviewed 2 of the financial advisors. But she said, this is going to be a two-way conversation. You're the expert, I get it. But I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to get you on the phone. I'm going to ask you the hard questions because I know this stuff. So don't patronize me. Don't take me for granted. It's going to be an equal relationship. Are you good with that or not? And she hired someone. She's been with them for 1.5 years. And it is such a great relationship, so much better. She's treated as an equal. They respect her. And this is a productive relationship. This perfect example of you can have a financial advisor, but there are good ones and bad ones. And you're not going to take shit because this is your wealth and this is your future.
I love that. And there's something so empowering because when you have that confidence in yourself to ask those questions, just seeing the response and reaction of the advisor is going to actually tell you a lot, right? And that's where you get to trust yourself. Because if you have your little tentacles and your tinglies going up saying, wait a second, I think so that's why I love, because just even having, my father used to say to me about mechanics. He's like, Sarah, you don't need to be a mechanic, but understand the workings of your car so that when you do take it to the mechanics, you're not taking for a ride, right? Like have your base skills and knowledge so that when you're having that conversation, when you're being spoken to, that you're not just blind faith saying, okay, cool, right? So whether you already have an investor or not, and you're interested in getting into it, still bring that awareness, bring that knowledge to the table for yourself.
Exactly. So now, exactly right? So now let's tie the bow on this third point. I don't have the time. Well, none of these women who've taken my course have the time, right? But they made it a priority. If this is a priority, you make time happen. But here's the other point. So the common myth, as you pointed out before, this is what we see in the movies, this is what we see in the media. And yeah, it's true. This is what I did at the hedge fund too. I had 3 big screens, right? That I would be watching like several hundred stocks, literally every second they're moving, right? I know all of these stocks well. I worked about 80 to 100 hours a week. And I want to make this contrast for a reason, to show you why it's gambling when I see a non-professional invest in a single stock like Apple or Google. And I want to show you what is an alternative way to invest, right? And how much time does it really take? and I'm spending 80 to 100 hours a week researching my ideas, I can speak to the CEO, CFO, investor relations of the companies I'm covering, and they're not going to tell me anything they're not telling the rest of the world, because that would be illegal, right? That's material non-public information. They're not going to do that. But it's very different when you're speaking directly to the CEO and you're speaking to her every quarter and you go meet with her at conferences. You can pick up difference in tonalities. You can pick up difference in body language. And it's very different when you're hearing about her business strategy directly from her versus secondhand through a research report or third hand through the media, or not at all. This is public information, but it won't be broadcast out there, right? But it's public information. In spite of all of that, in spite of having access to the best analysts in the world, if I want to know what's happening in China, I can call the best analyst on China. In spite of this, and get this, if a Wall Street professional's track record is 55%-ish, 55%-ish after all this work, they're considered heroes.
Wow.
So now you, as a non-professional investor, without doing any of this thing, without having the background or the experience, can you see how it's complete gambling?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the better way to invest? So here is what I call the secret sauce of investing. It shouldn't be secret, but it was secret. For the first 5 years on Wall Street, I had no idea about this. I was on Wall Street. I had no idea about this. I learned about it at Harvard Business School. And then I went back and I'm like, oh my God, this is practiced everywhere. Why didn't someone tell it to me? It remains a secret. Who here's heard of Ray Dalio? Ray Dalio? Yeah, you have. So it's okay unless you're in the industry. Ray Dalio founded the world's biggest hedge fund. And he's an incredible investor. So he calls this the holy grail of investing. And I'm glad I shouldn't say he's thinking the same way as me. I'm glad I'm thinking the same way as him. That would be quite a big head if I say, like, I'm glad Ray Dalio is thinking the same way as I am. No, it's the other way around. So here it is, okay? And I'll say it, it's simple. Well, first thing I learned at Goldman Sachs is, Andy, the reason we're so good at what we do, from my mentor, the reason why we're so good with the #1 investment bank in the world is because we can cut complexity down and we can make things simple, right? If you can make complex things simple,
Mm-hmm.
far ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was trained in day one. So here it is. This investing concepts, cut out all the noise. I can give you the secret sauce, what Ray Dalio calls the holy grail, in one simple sentence. I'll give you the sentence and then I'll explain it here. So you want to be invested in 5 to 10 decent, diversified funds that don't move together. Okay, what does this mean? Let's break it down. Simple, right? You want to be invested in 5 to 10 decent, diversified funds that don't move together. We're not talking about 50 single stocks here. We're not talking about 30 single stocks here. We're not talking about timing the market. We're not talking about when to buy, when to sell. Those are the common things you hear in the news and with newsletters and stuff. Let me tell you what to buy today. Let me tell you what to sell today. Oh my God, what a miserable way to live.
Scary. That's scary. Just saying that, it's like my heart goes, like,
Right?
I wouldn't want to do
and
that.
that's why most people think this is complicated and boring, and I don't have the time for it. So let me just break it down. So you want to be invested in 5 to 10 decent, diversified funds that don't move together. All right, let's break it down. 5 to 10. Decent. There is no consistent best. Okay? So let's stop looking for the perfect portfolio. It doesn't exist. I would have found it. I've been looking for 23 years. I would have found it. There is no perfect portfolio. You need 5 to 10 funds. What's a fund? Anyone know what a fund is? What's a fund? So a fund, have you heard of mutual funds? Mutual funds? Yeah. A mutual fund, also ETF. Have you heard of ETF? ETF, exchange traded funds, they're like stock. Basically what a fund is. A fund holds hundreds of stocks. So for example, there's a fund that invests in the S&P 500. Who here has heard of the S&P 500, right? S&P 500, yeah. These are the 500 biggest companies in the United States. Boeing, Marriott Hotels, Coca-Cola, Tesla, Apple, Google, Facebook, right? So the 500 biggest companies in the United States. You don't have to guess, hey, should I be in Apple? Should I be in Microsoft? Should I take a bet on Boeing? Should I take a bet on Tesla? Whatever. And you don't have to buy 500 single stocks. You buy one share of a fund like, these are not financial recommendations, I'm not a financial advisor, these are just examples, like IVV or SPY or VOO. There are 3 different funds that do exactly the same thing. They mimic the movements of the 500 biggest stocks. And now you're diversified across 500 stocks, right? So a fund invests in many stocks. So like this, you can have a fund of all the bonds in the United States, right? It's called the bond index. It's called AGG, AGG. Again, another example, it's got like 12,000 bonds in it. So now you're not betting on the bond of one company. You could have a fund that invests in emerging markets. So India, China, Taiwan, South Korea, South Africa, right? So now you're not betting on one company. You got 2,500 companies in that portfolio. So everybody got what a fund is? All right, so now let's backtrack. You want to invest in 5 to 10 of these funds. Decent, diversified funds. And here is the most important part of the secret sauce. You want to invest in 5 to 10 decent, diversified funds that don't move together. Okay, what do I mean by that? They don't have to move opposite. So one goes up, the other goes down. Not needed. If one goes up 5%, the other one maybe goes up 2.5%. If one goes up 1%, the other one goes up 0.2%. One goes up 1%, the other one goes up 1.5%. One goes down 1%, the other one goes down 1.5%. Maybe on one day, one goes down 0.2%, the other one goes up plus 0.5%, right? They don't move together. So when you combine investments that don't move together, get this, this is so counterintuitive. When you combine investments that don't move together, you can reduce your risk materially versus trying to pick single stocks. You can reduce your risk materially. We're talking 20, 30, 40, 50%. So you can go on a lower roller coaster without potentially giving up returns.
That's amazing.
This was so groundbreaking. It won a Nobel Prize.
Let me ask you, Andy, though.
Invest in Wall Street. This is what most people get wrong by saying, oh my God, I'm going to buy Tesla. I'm going to buy Apple. I'm going to buy Microsoft. I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Well, why go through that hassle?
So would you say, Andy, because when you say they don't move together, because I'm not, when you're investing, you're not going to necessarily know, but so like for, let's say my mind that works in things. So like I have a portfolio that's AI and green energy, and then I have one that's the S&P 500. Would that be considered not moving together, right? It's like
you can actually look it up. It's called correlation. You can actually look it up.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that.
You want to see an example right now?
Sure.
All right. Well, let's see an example right now. Hang on. Let me just pull up my screen. It's free. You can do this. Again, please don't be overwhelmed at this point. This is something I introduced in week 4 of my 10-week course. I just want to show you how easy it takes seconds to do this. All right, it's called correlation. All right, let me give you some background. When the number, it's just a simple number. When it's 1, that means it moves exactly up and down together. So
Okay.
1, so that will not reduce your risk. -1 is exact opposite. But that I've yet to find 2 investments that are -1, that are exactly opposite. Most you will find between 0 and 1. And what I've found is if it's less than 0.85, you can start reducing risk. All right, simple. So +1 moves exactly, -1 moves exactly opposite. That doesn't exist. I haven't found one. Usually most investments are 0 to 0.85. You find some that are negative. That's a unicorn. It's great when you find something that's negative. But most 0 to 1. And if it's less than 0.85, you start to reduce risk. Okay. So I'm going to go on this website. It's called portfoliovisualizer.com. Here, I'll share my screen. Can I share my screen? Can you enable me?
Let me see if I can enable you. Doodle-doo-doo-doo. Make you host.
Okay, co-host.
There we go.
Okay, so this is pretty exciting. Again, please don't be overwhelmed by the website. I just want to show you an example. So let's look at this. So I'm going to go to portfoliovisualizer.com and I'm going to go to this asset correlations and I'll show you how simple it is. First of all, you see there's not many inputs needed. So SPY is the overall US market, right? And do you have the ticker of your green fund, Sarah, of that AI fund that you were talking about? No? Okay. Let's just look at something else. Let's look at a fund that invests in emerging markets, FEMKX.
Okay.
Just out of like your lived experience, if you think about these big companies in the United States, very established, right? And then companies in emerging markets, some of them are very established. Do you think the two stocks move together? Where do you think they'll be on the scale from -1 to +1? Just guesses. Vicky, Bobby, Lynette, Nicola, let's see in the chat. What do you think? And those of you who are watching this live stream, put in the comments. What do you think? Okay, so Nicola thinks less than 0.85. Okay. Less than 0.85. 0.5 from Bobby. Any other guesses? Because you're about to see. You're about to see.
Let's see. Drum roll, please.
Okay, 0.5. So let's see. So look at this correlation. It starts in 2000 because I want to pick multiple economic cycles. 0.75, right? So the prize goes to Nicola. The 0.75, right? And Bobby, you're right. So this number is between, you know, what both of you suggested, 0.75. So you can actually reduce risk. Now let me show you a bond index like AGG. This is bond index. Look at this, 0.2. Can you see how you can reduce risk meaningfully? It's 0.2. Okay. Now let me show you something called gold, right? Well, we know gold, what not something called gold. So here, I'll put in gold here. Hang on, I'm looking for the caret. Gold. 0. All right, so now let me give you a real life example. Now, so you all saw, you very easily took seconds, right? It took seconds to look at the correlation. So now you know what doesn't move together. It's findable, it's knowable. Now let me give you a real life example, and this is gonna knock your socks off. Is that a term you use with women? Knock your socks off?
Yeah, well.
Oh, okay, cool. So I learned a lot as well. Like, you know, I will never be a woman. I'm not a woman, but I can at least relate. I can't relate, but I can at least learn, right? Every interaction is a learning experience for me. So I can try and relate better with you. So who knows what the lost decade is? The lost decade. Sounds like a movie title James Cameron would come up with. The lost decade. Well, the period between 2000 and 2012, I know it's 12 years, 2000 to 2012 has gone down on Wall Street as the lost decade. And many people think we might be approaching another lost decade. Why is it called a lost decade? Because when you look at the overall US stock market, the S&P 500, where it was in 2000, it took 12 years to get back to the same place. And then it went up. So during that time, what happened? There was a 40% market crash during 2000. It's like a W. There was a 40% market crash in 2001, 2002, dot-com bust. You all remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then the markets came back up. This is the first leg of the W. And then we had the global financial crisis. And the market crashed 45%. And then it came back up. And it was August 2012 when it reached back, and then it went up from there. So this 12-year period is called a lost decade. Now let's go through this. If you were afraid I might lose all my money, right? You're starting in 2000, you're in that period. You would not invest your money, right? You would leave it in cash. Your returns, 0, right? Let's forget about inflation. Guaranteed to be 0, right? You're not investing. The second, which people do, is let me time the market, right? How often have you heard of this? Why don't I just wait for the market to crash and then I'll invest? Oh my God, that could be the worst thing ever. And when you look at the stock price chart and anyone wants it, I'll give it to you. And just do this exercise where you move your palm from left to right. Even though you know it's a W, you will not be able to time. Even though you know the future, you will not be able to time when to buy, when to sell. So timing the market would have been likely a loss-making exercise. Had you tried to pick the best stocks, it would have likely lost you money. Now, let's use the principles that I just showed you, right? Invest in 5 to 10 funds that don't move together. If you're just invested in the S&P 500, that's 500 stocks that don't move together. And every month, doesn't matter whether it's $100 every month, $1,000 every month, $10,000, doesn't matter. But you invest it consistently every month. Your total return over this 10-year, 12-year period, total return. Are you ready for this?
We're ready.
32% total return.
Wow.
Yes, 32% total return versus having a zero if you just stayed out in cash on the sidelines because I'm too worried, I'm too afraid I'm going to lose all my money, or a loss-making venture by trying to time the market or pick the best stocks. A simple strategy of S&P 500 would have given you about a 32% return. Could you have done better? Let's use the principle that I just showed you. If you were about 60% invested in the S&P 500, about 15 to 20% in the emerging markets, the fund that I just showed you,
Mm-hmm.
about 12.5% in the bond index, that's the other one that we looked at, and then 7.5% in gold. You saw the numbers, none of them moved together, right? And you invested every month, $1,000, let's say, and every 3 months you went back and you changed the percentages so that it's always 60, 20, 12.5, 7.5. Your total return at the end of this period, this last decade, I can't wait to see your reactions. 62%.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh my God,
Yes. Right? Isn't that mind-blowing? No one's going to come out and share this with you simply and effectively and say, you don't need to time the market. You don't need to worry about when to buy, when to sell. You don't have to worry about which stocks to look at, which single stocks are you going to rest your hat on. No. You want to be invested in 5 to 10 decent diversified funds that don't move together, and then align this to your unique roller coaster and invest once a month. I actively discourage my students from looking at stocks every day. You don't need to trade every day. You're a busy woman. You got a lot of things on your plate. You come, obviously there's initial time to learn how to invest this, but after that, you invest in portfolio, you pick the 15th of the month, invest it again. The second month, you invest it again. Third month, you invest it again. Fourth month, you come back and you revisit your ideas. You revisit portfolio, and then you off to the races again.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I've seen you talk about it too, like with your students. Really, once you've got the flow going, you talk about maybe an hour every week, if anything, to kind of just give a glance.
It's 10 to 15 minutes every day.
Yeah.
And there's this one email, and again, I have no affiliation with the Wall Street Journal. It's just something that I found. I love to cut out noise. Think about all the news channels, all the newspapers, all the online articles, all the newsletters that are throwing stuff at you. Oh my God, I have a million things to do than listen to all that noise and get confused. So I get one news email in the morning from the Wall Street Journal email. I'm not looking for opinions. I'm looking for facts. And that takes me I don't read it cover to cover. I just go to some page that I'm interested in. It takes me 5 to 10 minutes to read that every morning. And that's what helps me make 1 degree shifts in my knowledge.
Which we know long term make that huge difference.
Exactly.
Now, and Vicky is asking how much to invest each month.
So in the United States, you're very lucky. You can start with $5 a month.
Wow.
Because in the United States, you don't pay trading fees to buy and sell. And you can diversify even a small amount. So for example, if you decide to invest $100 a month, and say you want to buy 20% of this $100, you want to put in the S&P 500. Well, each share of SPY is about, I don't know what was the last time, but it's about $450. Like, well, Andy, I'm investing $100. I want to put 20% of that, $20 into S&P 500. Each share is $450. How do I do that? Well, in the United States, you can buy a fraction of a share. So you had a huge advantage here where even overseas, right? You can invest with small amounts, but it's a myth that you need big amounts of money. The key thing is let's get started now, but let's not wing it. Let's get started now. Let's get started with $5 a month, $15 a month. That will soon grow to, I can invest $50 a month, because then you'll get excited about investing. Let me put $100. Let me try and save these non-essential expenses. I'm not saying don't have fun, but there's so many things where we're wasting money because we're not even tracking those. And let's instead start saving. And soon you'll be seeing, oh my God, I can actually put $250 away. And
you touch on something so important, Andy, because I think if even as, and I don't, this may be part of your course, I don't know, but if we were to take stock for 20 minutes and look at some of what we spend our money on, I think we'd probably find some of the money we could be investing rather than spending it on distractions and things that make us feel, oh, right now I'm feeling blue, let me go buy like that, $10, $20 coffee. What are places that I can, depending on how your financial status is, but what are things that I can actually create with, right? Like so much of life is how do we bring creation to our lives. Now, Andy, I don't want to go, we're already at 2, and I want to make sure we have time to, does anybody have questions here other than Bobby? I don't understand why you have to, rebalance periodically to original portions of the funds.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily original proportion of the fund, but what is the percentage portfolio you want going forward, right? So you spend time coming up with allocations. I want 20% in this fund, 30% in this fund, 40% in this fund, whatever, right? You had some logic as to why you wanted those percentages. So as time goes on, those different funds will move differently, and those ratios will change. If your thesis is unchanged, right? If your thesis is unchanged, then you will rebalance your original portfolio. But it's very likely you might have new ideas, right? Or things have changed in the world. Right.
Because part of what you teach is like, that's why I went into green energy and AI, because I was fascinated by the industries. And I believe for myself that these are ones that are going to be emerging and all kinds of things growing. So out of my own interests and curiosity, I was like, okay, let me take a small amount that I feel safe in and kind of see how it goes, and just kind of plopped it in there and said, let me just watch for a while and see.
Exactly. So it's not a set it and forget it portfolio, but it's also not, I need to be watching stocks every day.
Right. So Vicky also asked, do you teach where to keep the money to be using it to,
using retirement? Yeah, of course. You know, again, you choose your roller coaster, right? So this one woman in my course, I won't name her just for anonymity. She's 65 and she's like, I don't want to go on a massive roller coaster. So I'm going to invest my money in fixed bonds. And she's going to earn about 5.5%, 6% with these bonds. And they will mature in 3 months, 9 months, or a year. So then she'll get that into cash and then she can use it for retirement. So she's taught through it is what will help me sleep well at night. And she's taught through how much volatility, what kind of roller coaster do I want to go on? And what are my cash needs? And that becomes very important, because then you have, no one should call it a crystal ball because there isn't one, but you have clarity on how long will this portfolio, how long will this money last me? And that's really cool to be able to look at that and then see, oh my God, like, wow, let me change things now. Let me be cognizant of my spending habits or whatever I need to do so that this money is going to last me. If I'm 65 and I want to plan a 30-year retirement, that this money will last me. Or maybe I need to work 2 hours a day, right? Maybe I need to do that. So that clarity is very empowering.
And then Nicola asked, is it better than a bank savings interest? You kind of touched on that before.
It is. So I just saw an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, which said earn 6%. Everybody knows what a CD is. You can get a CD in your bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can earn 6% in the CD offered by JP Morgan, but you need at least $5 million. But guess what?
Don't have that.
You can buy treasury bills. You don't need $5 million. You got $1,000, $2,000. Put in treasury bills that will earn you right now 5.5% to 6% over the next 3 to 6 to 9 months. Everyone can do that. You don't need to have $5 million. You can do that. In fact, you will earn more in treasury bills than in certificate of deposit with a bank gives you an interest. Why? Because the banks are investing in treasury bills.
Mm-hmm. They're using your money that you have in the bank to invest, and you get the little sprinkles above everything else as back.
The middleman fee, right? But you can go and invest in treasury bills yourself. They're guaranteed as long as you hold it. So if you buy a 6-month treasury bill, that will pay you, I think, 5.7% as of last check. 5.7%. Now the price will move between now and 6 months every day. But if you own it for 6 months, you're going to get guaranteed 5.6% return on that.
That's actually a pretty good return.
Incredible. About a year and a half ago, you were earning about 0.5%.
So Bobby has 2 questions. She goes, is there a volatility statistic that can be looked up online for the various funds, and aren't treasury bills just an American thing? We've got some Canadian.
You've got something similar. These are government issued bonds, right? Because the government, depending on which country you are in, is risk-free.
Yeah.
So you've got similar instruments. You've got them in the UK. You've got them in Australia. You've got them in most countries. because the government does issue bonds, which you can buy.
And do you guys have, because we have an interesting thing in Canada that they opened up called a tax-free, it's the tax-free, whatever. So we get a certain amount of money we can invest, and we don't have to pay taxes on the earnings of our investments. I don't know if that's...
we've got retirement accounts here. So you can do, if you're in the US, if you are, again, I caveat, I'm not a financial advisor. You want to talk to your financial advisor for advice. None of this is recommendations or advice, right? These are just examples that I'm sharing. So if you work with an employer, you can open up a 401k, right? That is tax deferred until you retire. Or if you leave a company, you can roll that 401k to an IRA, which is a very smart thing to do. Or if you own your own business, you can open up a SEP IRA. And these are ways to get a tax deduction today.
Yeah.
If you put $20,000 into a SEP IRA, you can deduct taxes on $20,000 of income. And then that grows tax deferred until you decide to take it out in retirement. And that's when you get taxed at your tax bracket then.
And then Bobby has a thing here because 8,000, actually, Bobby, I believe in Canada, because I know it's more than 8K, we have a life term of 85,000 max that we're ever allowed to put in that account. So even if you withdraw your investments, it doesn't replenish. It's not like a circulating. So if you've put in 20, 30,000 and then you decide to pull those stocks out, you still will only have the balance of a total of 85 over your lifetime because it is tax free. But it's not per year limit of that. I would know I put a little bit more in the, yeah. Okay, awesome. Does anybody else? Andy, I made you host, so I am no longer host, just FYI. If
so
you want
to, I give you back host?
Just click the little dots on my button on my face.
Yeah.
And you should be able to make host.
Yes.
There you go. So we had the changeover of our videos and stuff. Awesome. So is there anybody else? As I said, there's so much. I mean, and Andy has such a wealth, and I think this is so, what would you say, Andy? So as we close up, I wanted to get into your story about how you moved this because your wife's a doctor and you love that she did that. I wanted to share it. It's just such a beautiful story of how your heart showed that, hey, I'm making money, but I want to be living a purpose and my message. And I just thought it was such a beautiful story. So I don't know if you have 2 seconds to share that before we close off and pull out any takeaways.
Yeah, so for me, of course, I didn't grow up with wealth, and fortunate to get a job at Goldman Sachs to start out my career, which was a story in itself because I didn't come from an Ivy League school, went to Lafayette College, good school, but not an Ivy League. But then I went through 20 years of Wall Street career. I was, I married my wife halfway through that. She's a doctor, and every day she would come home and say, I made a difference. So she works with patients with dementia, and she'd like, I made a difference to this patient. I made a difference to this patient. And I'm like, I did $1 billion deal. And look, after the first 2 weeks of doing $1 billion deals, it becomes, there's no fascination with $1 billion deal. So it's like, it's very intellectually stimulating. I love deal making. I love investing, but I didn't make a difference to anyone's life. And because of the way I grew up, because of what I was seeing is the disparity even in the 2020s with women, and because I've got 2 girls, it was about time to say, what can I do to share my skill set? And the first person I taught this was my 21-year-old niece. And in 6 hours, she went from no background to investing in an incredible portfolio, and that look in her eyes, that shine, that glimmer, that I can do this. I have ownership over my future wealth. That was the joy that I was looking for, and that's what set me off. And I left my career to do this full time.
I love that. It's as I said, you and I have been, I put social because you're talking about social circles. It's in media. We share in groups and stuff. And I've always been just so impressed with your integrity. For me, integrity is so huge. And that's, who I bring to the stage and to people that I want to help support. That, like you said, when you're talking to your advisor, do you have that connection? Do you have that trust? Do you have that belief that their goals are the same and in the direction of what is best for you? So I think it's so beautiful. And I just love that story so much. And okay, hold on, Nicola. And yes, Vicky, we're going to share how to get with Andy. Quick question: how about the
Yeah,
potential
you can reach
government?
me anytime, by the way. If you've got questions about this, you don't have to take my course. You can follow me on Facebook. I'll share this bonus. You can get in my newsletter, but please don't make, I'm not about this being transactional. I
No.
want to impact. I want to impact you. I want to share my skill set with you. So please, I'm only a question away. I'm only an email away.
And your Facebook, just your regular profile, you share so many amazing tidbits and kind of like this. I mean, I loved your post about Warren,
Warren Buffett is not a Beyonce. Warren
Not
Buffett is a Beyonce, but we're the backup dancers.
that, I love that post. That was awesome. And even today I was looking, I mean, you share a lot of really good insights. And as I said, Andy's been kind enough. He's going to offer a gift that helps you see what is your financial risk factor. There you go. He's just dropped it there. Anybody watching live, we will post it into the Facebook feed after the fact. And so I really appreciate that. And then let's just quickly, Nicola, how about the potential government shutdown in the US? Will the Treasury bill be affected?
What a great question. I just wrote 2 posts on this week because they're so important. So if you go to my Facebook, I've written 2 versions of this post, but here's a quick snapshot. It doesn't matter, I think, quite honestly, at this point, whether the shutdown happens or not, right? The shenanigans are happening, and that is not great for the United States credit. So we used to be rated AAA. That is like the best rating you can get. It's like a credit score, right? I think 800 is the best. When this happened in 2011, when there was a lot of uncertainty about government shutdown or what's going to happen, S&P, there's three rating agencies, just like we have Experian and Transamerican and one of those in the US for rating a credit. There's Moody's, S&P's, and Fitch. Forget about the names, just think that 3. One of them downgraded the US in 2011. The second one downgraded us in August, the last time these shenanigans happened. And obviously, if your credit score goes down, do you have to pay more in interest? Yes, you do. The same thing with the US. The Treasury yields went up. That's great if you were in cash because now you can invest in higher yields. But I think it's a matter of time when the third shoe drops. I know that's a weird analogy, but it's like a monster. But the Moody's is yet to downgrade the United States. And that could happen. And then that will potentially increase yields. So the things that I think are really risky if you already own them are long-term bonds, because they would go down the most. Tech stocks, usually risky stocks, tend to go down most. Crypto. And again, each of these has a place in your portfolio, but you want to be cognizant of what could get impacted. And that's why I said, people have got to be doing high fives, because there's also an opportunity to use that strategy that Ray Dalio's talked about, that I talked about, and diversify a portfolio. Because if yields go up, well, let's start moving money into these guaranteed bonds or bonds with very low risk, or let's try and diversify into different, depending on what our roller coaster is, depending on where we are in our stage of life.
I love you. Yeah, and just to also add, because so much like it for me, a lot of my message is understand that the access that you're being fed on your social media, in the news, and everything, they sell on fear tactics, right? And they're going to make big, woo, scary. But I mean, it's important. And that's why I love Andy. And I'm assuming it's just even understanding the different types of market, the bear market versus the bull market, and understanding, I mean, there's always going to be ups and downs. And I think Andy, you can maybe add to this more, but for me, the biggest takeaway is trust yourself and love yourself to bring awareness, like have those words, the terminology, the understanding, so that you feel confident to even have that initial conversation with an investor if you're not ready to kind of go in on your own, because it is a new world of technology. You can invest in these funds without having the investor to start if you want to start small, however each person wants. But I think there's something so powerful of just awakening that awareness within, right? Yeah. What would you say, Andy, is your biggest what would you hope that everyone takes away? If they take nothing else away, what is the takeaway for today for everybody here?
2 things is you don't need to invest in single company stocks. In fact, you don't want to invest in single company stocks, as we're taking way too much risk without the gain. The second is those 3 fears. They're very normal, right? I want to begin, but I don't know where to begin. Well, you're in the majority. In fact, you're in the 99%. You're not alone. Don't feel ashamed. Second is, I could lose all my money. Yes, if you invest the way a lot of people do, but you don't have to. The third is I don't have time. Well, what's important?
That's amazing. That's so amazing. Andy, I want to thank you again for sharing your heart, your message, your journey, your insights. As I said, it's something that I hold very near and dear. You know, we've talked about it. My mom, single mom, father wouldn't pay child support, and she didn't have that skill and knowledge, and she ended her days penniless. And it's from people with a heart and passion like you to say, I want to be a voice. I want to speak louder than the fear, than the lack, than the scarcity, and show people what is possible. Not the shiny magazine covers, not the get rich quick and ooh la la, you know, but hey, everyday people, this is what's possible. And for women, there's no reason that you shouldn't feel confident in yourself to have that awareness and the ability to have those conversations and invest, because it really is, you know. And I love when you say, because it's not time, like I'm going to be 50 this year. And even when I left my corporate, everyone's like, oh, it's too late. I'm like, too late? I got 30 years ahead of me. Like, yeah. I'm not going to die tomorrow. Like, yeah, I'm too young still to not take that chance. And so I love that you say that, like, it is never too late. I love the examples you shared too. So thank you guys. Thank you so much, Andy. It's such a pleasure, such an honor. Lynette, Nicola, Vicky, Bobby, thank you for being here. Everybody who's watching live stream, we're going to watch this later. Thank you. Truly blessings. As I said, you dropped the link there, and we are going to drop it in the live stream as well. You want to drop it again, Andy? Did everybody get a chance to grab Andy? That's the free gift. Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
Check it out. And as you go through those 5 questions, you got questions, just reply back to me, because this will take you to my newsletter, which you can unsubscribe at any time if the style doesn't resonate. But use that opportunity, ask me questions as you go through. That's the most important step as you take step 1 is, what is my risk? What is my roller coaster?
Yeah. And as I said, please join Andy. You're just Andy Gupta on Facebook, because I said you have a wealth of information on Facebook as well.
Yeah. So, Andy Gupta, and you know, you can come on in and or just send me an email and I can you know, drop it here as well. That's my Facebook. Perfect.
Beautiful. Awesome. Guys, have a beautiful day. Thank you for coming and sharing. I really honor everybody here saying, hey, I want to learn more. I want to connect and own, I call it the financial prowess and the strength that you all have within you to make these decisions and know you have the choices. So thank you so much. Andy, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be talking again and seeing ourselves again.
Thank
everybody.
You so inviting me into your community. It's
my pleasure. Thank you. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.